I figured before I put up the Apache here, I give a little more in depth on the history of it and what's actually I'm actually running with this thing. It's a 1958 Apache body. I'd bought it. It's probably been about 5 or 6, probably about 6 years ago, and it. So the folks who actually who built the original truck they took the 58 Apache body and put it on a 76 Blazer frame. There's I'm not sure if you can really see those motor mounts, the body mounts here. That's what they fabricated to rectify the problem with the body mounts, from frame to body. And that was necessary to get the whole body line straight across. The bed's actually sitting, flush on the frame, and the front clip. There's I think you can probably get in there to see that. It raised it maybe an inch, and they ran some angle iron to actually meet with the rest of the clip. So it looks janky as hell, but I'll tell you what, it definitely fits, and it's strong as hell. It just looks bad. But it had it had the original 305, the stock 305, the stock half-ton axles, and it was built to be just an abused toy, and there was nothing special going on with what they'd done for it. And so when I got it, I put 3/4 ton axles underneath it, full float, 14 rear, and a Dana 44 heavy duty front axle on it. And that was a full-time front axle, and put the mile marker was the only ones that I could find reasonably that built a lockout kit for these 44 HDs. And then took out the engine and transmission it had in it. It was just a 305 with the turbo 350, and that 350 was toast. And I put in I also had a 203 transfer case. I put the 355 small block Chevy, turbo 700 trans, and a 208 transfer case. The 208, it's just a bone stock 208, and the 700, it's actually it's beefed up to it's rated for about 700 horsepower. It's got upgraded clutches, and the planetary gears in it are all beefed up, and so it's not a standard 700, and I went that route because I wanted that real low first gear. The 350s and 400s don't have their first gear ratio is it's right up there with the second gear in the 700. So that's why I went that route. I wanted that real low first gear, because my first original plans were to have a truck that I could drive around town and on the highway some, and also be able to play with it, and having that overdrive plus that real low first gear kind of that gave me the best of both worlds. And the engine in it, I bought the block. I got a real good deal on that, and this guy had built a motor for an old Malibu of his, and it was a all stock motor that still had a cast iron intake and all that on it, and he had ram horn, the small ram horn exhaust manifolds, and I swapped. It had a real mild cam. Like I said, the heads were reproduction. They're similar to double hump heads. They're not an original factory double hump, but they're a reproduction version, and plenty of flow for what I wanted. I put in a Lunati Voodoo cam. I can't remember the exact specs of that anymore, but it was pretty radical of a cam. It's not extreme, but it's still not mild. Again, it was that middle of the road that I was trying to hit, because it was supposed to be a double duty type of rig, and it's got a dual plane air gap intake, and I put long tube headers on it, trying to maximize that low end torque while keeping it possible to run in the higher ranges. The cam was rated for about between the $2,000 to $6,000 in the RPM, and I think that came out perfect for the heads it's got, and how large the primaries on the primary tubes on the headers are, and that it matched it matches the intake manifold also. That's about the range that those are good for producing a lot of power. And the axles, I think the truck I got them off of, I think it had like 373 gears or something like that, and I put a 456 gears in there. In the rear end, I actually got the entire gear and locker assembly out of an old military Cuck V. So I got it's not a new Detroit locker. It's the old, much better, much more robust version that they used to put in the old military Chevrolets. And the front axle, I couldn't find a locking kit or a locker or anything for it, because of it being a 44 HD, not a standard 44. It's just evidently it's not enough of a market for them to actually produce anything, so we just welded up the spider gears in it. So I kind of did the reverse of what most people do. They usually put weld the rear end and put a limited slip or something, or a lunchbox locker in the rear end, or they put a lunchbox in the front and weld the rear. Did the exact opposite. I welded my front and put a locker in the rear end, but it drives just fine. I mean, especially with it only bind up if you're on dry pavement and four-wheel drive with the hubs locked in, so in the mud, I mean, you can still steer just fine. You know, people were trying to tell me that you won't be able to turn the wheel, and you know, I'll be moving in a straight line as long as I'm locked in. That's not true. There's enough give on the dirt and everything. You can still steer and all that kind of stuff. It does, you know, just fine. We put in a different radiator. You know, see how, if you can see how big that radiator is there. I mean, it definitely does a job on keeping the engine cool. I went with the electric fan for, you know, to keep the fan off the engine. Like, my dad kept trying to tell me that, you know, that was it wouldn't make any difference. I'm making a mistake. And here recently, Engine Masters did an episode where they compared running different engine fans as opposed to not running a mechanical fan. And the fan that robbed the least amount of power was the stock fans that you would find with the fluid clutches, and that still robbed about 15 to 20 horsepower off the engine, which I guess, you know, for the street and all that kind of stuff is fine, but when you're trying to get every last bit of power you want, I mean, even a couple horsepower can make a difference. So I'm glad I went that route. And you know, I ran a MSD box in there, and you know, blaster coil, and this is definitely not anything pretty or fancy, but it's gotten the job done for me. It looks like shit, but it runs like hell. You know, I got a fuel cell for the back, but it's not hooked up just yet. I need to clean that back out and get it remounted. Inside the cab there, I've got all the pieces for the doors, and I've actually got replacement windows because, again, this is supposed to be a nice, you know, daily driver truck, and I end up letting it go to hell. And you know, maybe I'll have another one someday. I love these late 50s style Apaches. I love the Apache series, period. You know, the 50s and the 60s versions, but I think I like this one a lot more because it combines that early 50s style of the Chevrolet trucks. But like the seats, the steering wheel, all that stuff that's straight from the Blazer that they got the frame and all that from. And the windshield, as you can tell, it needs to go, and I'm going to take that out and replace it with plexiglass or Lexan, you know, to free up some weight out of it. And the that shifter there, that low car shifter, that's what I'm wanting to. That's for the turbo 700 R4. But like I said, we broke the cable on it, so we got the other one rigged up for now. And I like what they had done with the gauges here. That center gauge is the factory gauge from the Blazer, and then the other two are, you know, they're just aftermarket cheap gauges. But I mean, they couldn't figure out a way to get the original ones to work with the newer style equipment, so they kind of fabbed up a little dash in there, and I like the way that looked. But I'm going to take out that speedometer, and I'm going to stick the tack in that hole, because the speedometer isn't hooked up, and I have no reason to have a speedometer anymore inside of that. the suspension, I beefed it up with the ORD products. So I got the beefed up shackles and the greasable bolts that they sell with it's a 4-inch lift spring for the front there, and the rear I used ORD's shackle flip again with the heavy duty shackle and the greasable bolts, and I got the stock springs back there for that. So I wanted to be able to not just mud with it, but hit any terrain and have it really last and be strong enough. And I think I used the transmission mounts that they sell too, so I wouldn't break any mounts on that. Yeah, I had to buy a custom drive shaft because of the lift. It was just too much. With the longer transmission with the lift, it just the original slip yoke axle, or not axle, but drive shaft that I had was not quite enough, so I had a custom one built for that. And for the front axle though, don't know if you can really see what we did with it. Let the cat get out of the way, but we lengthened it ourselves because we weren't really worried about it being too unbalanced. We cut the drive shaft in half, and then got a piece of pipe that barely fit over that drive shaft, and just welded it up that way. I mean, the welds are strong. That's not a problem. Those welds are perfect for it. It's not balanced, but yeah, it's not going to tear up the drivetrain any, because like I said, it doesn't get driven on the road or anything like that. It's just straight, off-road use now, and it won't ever be, the front output won't ever be spinning enough to actually do any damage on the truck. But the engine was never on a dyno or any of that. But I got some software that desktop dyno that's proven to be pretty accurate, and I punched in all the flow numbers and the cam and all that kind of stuff, and according to the desktop dyno, that engine puts out over 500 horsepower. And I mean, even if it's a 100 horsepower off, I mean, that's still a 400 horsepower engine. And I mean, you can tell when driving it, it's got a lot of power to it. But yeah, I thought I just figured I'd give a little walkthrough on what all actually is going on with that truck. And so I'll get that 92 pulled up now, and I'll do another walk over with it, because I've done a lot of work on that truck. It's on on the engine, on I've done a lot of computer work on it. I mean, there's a lot going on with that one, so that should be the next video. There's getting the 92 pulled up, and hopefully I get it back up to par. And thanks for stopping by and watching my videos. I hope you guys come back and keep watching more of them.